Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Live Today Health Talk. It is such a pleasure to be in the broadcasting network today. And as COVID continues, I'm going to continue to bring you health and wellness information, news that sometimes a little historical also, that will keep you intrigued on how we continue to survive, and weather the storms. So today's topic is not so much going to be about me or you personally with a journey, but it is going to be with the United States and how we remain resilient, how we are ways that we are just able to continue to survive. And for those of you that don't know, when I say resilient, that is we as American people living in the land of the free and of the brave have become so resilient. We are just so strong. And a lot of times we don't realize. And I know that as we go through, COVID, and as we go through the politics and everything else, the economy, everything that we're going through, and it just seems like, everything is just coming and coming and coming, and sometimes bogging us down or just pushing us down, and where we think that we may be at a brink that we don't know how we're going to make it. All of a sudden, we rise. We always rise. So do not think that this 2020 is going to be any different. Resilience, that means we dig in deep, and just like a palm tree, regardless of which way the wind or the problem may come, we always find a way to bounce back because we are America. And you may not like this, but America the Great. Americans, you are great, and you need to know it and recognize it, regardless of, people can mess with, like sisters and brothers in a house. We can argue and we can fuss and fight internally, but nobody else better mess with us. That's just how we are. I may not in uniform get along with or, see eye to eye with the person that I was in the foxhole with. But at the end of the day, we stood strong together. And that's the same thing with our household. And that's the same thing with our nation. So America, remember that we are strong and we are resilient. So let me, before I go any further into our topic for today, not forget to say our prayer. Okay, so please join me if you would. Most gracious and heavenly Father, we thank you. We thank you for the strength that you give us, for the character that you allow us to build, for the morals that you have set upon this nation, Father. Our nation was built on you and your word, Father, and I just pray that we will remember that. Each and every time we face an objection or an opposition, that we remember that our forefathers built our foundation on your word. by your standards, Father. So I pray that the churches and every Christian under the sound of my voice, everyone that believes in you and believes in your Son, Father, that they will remember that as he walked on this earth, he went through heck too, but yet he rose. And I thank you, Father, for your plan. I thank you for your grace, and I thank you for your mercy each and every day that you allow us to wake up and you allow us to be resilient. In Jesus' name, I pray and I thank you. Amen. Amen. All right, so our word for today is coming from Psalms, and it's Psalms 107, verse 1. And I'll be reading from the King James Version. To a lot of you, this will be familiar. Oh, give thanks unto the Lord, for he is good, for his mercy endureth forever. And I just want to say, remember that. Remember that, family. Remember that, Facebook friends. Don't forget it, okay? So shout out to a couple of businesses that have been helping us continue on with some of our activities. So first of all, I can't go any further with thanking my engineer and CEO for the SBIN Streaming Broadcast Inspirational Network, that he's not missed a beat with allowing me to broadcast live each and every weekend. So he's been there. We have not had a shutdown or any type of hiccups. We've been resilient. We've pushed through. Pray until something happens. We keep pushing, always saying a prayer that everything will just flow right, pieces will come together, and we continue to be live on the broadcasting network with plans to even expand. So stay tuned, because we have some more things coming for you. All right. Then for the Veteran Yoga Project, they too, as the gyms had closed, a lot of the yoga instructors got together, and we said, many of them are vets, but we said we wanted to keep our classes going. So even though we can't get in the vet centers, we can't get into the American Legions, the VFWs, the senior centers, we can't be there in person to continue our classes. Our pay got cut, and then we said still we would continue to teach our classes. Most of us donate our funds back into the organization, or some of us teach our classes for free, because teaching our classes not only helps you, stay, and it's not just for veterans, anybody can participate in the classes. We only ask that you donate to help keep the platform going, to help them pay for their expenses. But as we continue on with the classes, then we have been able to expand with instructors and to keep the online veteranyogaproject.org or the Veteran Yoga Project online streaming classes going each and every day, 7 days a week, coming at you all for free, almost 24 hours a day, because we have instructors that are East Coast, West Coast, and therefore they are able to give you the classes all day long. So please take advantage of them. The same thing with Revelation Wellness. Revelation Wellness has, because we could not do our next platoons in person and go back to the mountains in Arizona for our training, Elisa and her team with Revelation Wellness, fitness teachers, gospel preachers, we too have been able to take from the in-person platform and bring you live classes. So I think they just finished platoon 25 and 26. That means we have new instructors coming at you. So again, resiliency, have not missed a beat. The program continues. Gym shut down, but things are still going online. And even some of the areas have enough space so that they can get the instructors in there to still give you a live, full-fledged circuit training course, and just about everything else we've been doing has still been live where you have access to it. Facebook, Zoom, Instagram, you name it. We're plugging into it. So it's all coming to you. It's no need for us to say, during COVID, I gained a bunch of weight, or during COVID, I got sore. During COVID, I wasn't able to do this and I wasn't able to do that. Just check into it, and I bet you it's there. I shouldn't say bet you, right? But I don't want to say guarantee you either, but it's there. Just tap into it, okay? So I want to say that as we go into the holiday season, please be mindful of your loved ones. Check on those friends, neighbors, family members that may have lost a loved one during COVID. And we know that these are trying times. We know that it may be a little more isolation coming because the holiday seasons, a lot of the families cannot do the family gatherings for Thanksgiving and then again for Christmas because a lot of us have moved back into like phase one of COVID. So teach when you have a chance to teach your family members how to use the tablets, or they have the granny pads and stuff like that, so they can join you on the Zoom calls, so they can join you on Teams or WhatsApp or whatever apparatus and platform you want to use to touch base with them, invite them in. And then Azusa House Fellowship will also be hosting Saturday. This past Saturday, it started for the Thanksgiving grief share class. Okay, so look for it this Saturday as well. If you are not in our area, don't know how to contact us, or even if you just want to register for the class, that is griefshare.org, and just put in your zip code and you can find the closest class near you. If you want to join us, then put in 206, and I think it's 06, or it's either 16, okay? I apologize if I don't have the zip code right, but I think it's 20616, all right? Put the zip code in and look for the Thanksgiving Grief Share class, and it will give you all the instructions on how to join us. This holiday season, we want to prepare you and prepare you also to help others. Nobody needs to be alone through these holidays, and nobody needs to feel as though they're isolated. Now, moving on. This past week, WAVUSI, Women Veteran United Committee, we have not only started the the course with Melwood, taking part in their Operation Tohidu, which is for veterans that are dealing with some of the things I just talked about. It doesn't have to be PTSD or TBI or MST, just the undue pressure that COVID or isolation has brought on with depression, anxiety, and just so many other things that we're feeling as we try to make our way through this pandemic. So we actually had the opportunity to join Saratoga War House this past week as well. And I have to tell you, it was great. If you see my Facebook page, you will see me standing beside a beautiful mare, a former racetrack horse, thoroughbred, and she is taller than I am. So therefore, I'm going to say she, including her neck and everything, she had to be about 7 feet tall. But she was just gorgeous. And she was my partner as we went into the cage to bond. All right. I won't tell you, I can't really explain all the course. I can't use the word therapy because it's not supposed to be therapy, but it is supposed to help, just like the yoga mindful resilience, complement whatever therapy or treatment you're already going through. So that way it helps get you out of the funk or get you out of whatever phases it is that you're going through, COVID or non-COVID. A lot of us sometimes deal with a lot of things in our heads that just seem to close up on us at times. And there's so many activities, so many things we can do for self-help, reading for some, running for some, walking for some, a good workout for some. Or guess what? We went to the farm, the Baltimore Agricultural Center, and we linked up, and I mean really hooked up with the Saratoga War Horse, and we were their first class during COVID. So they changed, rearranged a whole lot of things for us so that our class would not be canceled. And we are so grateful that they met us right where we were. And each one of my comrades that joined us, the classes are small and intimate, and each one of the individuals bonded, and we were able to dump some stuff, right there in the cage with the horses. But the objective is to allow the horse to feel your presence, connect with you, and then once the horse feels comfortable, because remember, they are prey and they look at us as predators. So to be able to win that beautiful creature's trust is a step forward, and to be able to allow that animal to feel so comfortable with you that they humble themselves and they actually come to you after all the training. All right, so that was that. I can't really explain it anymore. It was just great. It was just great. So let me go into today's topic. So you heard me talk about, VA and compensation, blah, blah, blah. So as I start looking into or helping others as a veteran service officer, trying to help others with their claims, I've been browsing more on VA's website, trying to get acclimated with where things are. Now, the VA website has some meditation and some yoga classes on there as well. And they even have telehealth where you can just call in and listen to the meditation. It doesn't have to be visual like we're doing here. So while I was on their page, I stumbled across a group of veterans from World War I and World War II that I wasn't quite familiar with. And I think to say World War I, a lot of people don't even really associate them with World War I. They became more known, or their whereabouts became more known during World War II. So I'm going to share with you today about the code talkers. Now, hear me out, because and like I say with health and wellness, what I'm sharing with you, I just want to open the door to give you the opportunity to go and do further research for yourself. So please don't say anything about Tiffany said. Go and research more for yourself. But I found it quite interesting to hear and to read about and to research a little bit more about how the code talkers saved our butts, the United States, not just in World War II, but to hear that they actually started in World War I. But they saved our butts by going through the training and doing some of the things that they did. So let me read a little bit, and then I want to go back to some information that I received that I can remember from the documentary. Okay, so the code talkers were persons that were employed during the military. So they were enlisted just like we were during wartime, where it was very important to have a language that, of course, could not be translated or understood by the enemy. So as we know, the enemy was kicking our butt during World War II because they were able to intercept our messages, right? So Uncle Sam had to find a better way of communication for us. So they went to a gentleman by Mr. Johnson. His family, he was raised on the reservations with the Indians. So so I understand, went to his command. This is Marines that I'm talking about, and he went to his command and said, "Hey, why don't we try this?" Well, I understand the commandant didn't buy into it in the beginning, but after a while, he said, "Hey, you know what? What do we have to lose? Because right now we are losing." So before I go more into their journey, let me back up a little bit to say, Indians, as you all may already know, as we were being colonized, they were forced into now. I'm going to try to say this right. They were forced into reservations. Okay. And as they were moved into reservations from their land, and see, that's why I say this is part of health and wellness and part of our history, because they roamed the land, right? But as more people, I'll put it that way, started moving here and colonization took place, they were removed from their areas. And this is in our history books, right? And they were put on reservations. Well, as they were put on in reservations, the children were commanded or told that they needed to go to boarding schools. And they were also told to stop speaking in their native tongue, that they would go to the boarding schools, they would learn English, and they would learn how to be Americans. Now, I know I don't want to get into all of that, okay? But while they were in the boarding schools, remember Mr. Johnson and the Commandant, let's go back to that. He said they didn't think it would work. But then the Commandant later came back and said, well, what do we have to lose? Because we're getting our butts kicked. So recruiters started going to the boarding schools and recruiting the Indians, just asking them, hey, do you want a uniform? You want to fight for your country? And of course, like I remember what I said with brothers and sisters, regardless of how much we may bicker internally, what good does it do us to have an outside force come in and beat our tails? Because then what happens to us anyway? It's one thing to know that you're being beat by your brother and sister, right? And you always have a chance to be resilient and come back. But if an outside force, an intruder comes in and kicks your tail, then you really don't have a lot of say-so if you are, quote unquote, defeated or conquered in war terminology, right? So the Indians decided, yes, this is something that they wanted to do. So I understand that about 500, and it may have been more, 500 were recruited, and they were deemed to keep their mouths shut because this was a top secret mission. So I'm talking about the Marines right now. So as they went to the Marine camp, they went to boot camp, all of the Indians, they were segregated, okay? So the Indians stayed in their classes, and and I understand they did well. One of the videos that I listened to for the documentary, the gentleman that was speaking even said, of course they would do well. You know, they were used to taking the animals out into the wild, right? And having to survive out there in, day and night with the animals and having to do everything, with their hands. So therefore, giving them a cot and 3 meals, that was like living in luxury, right? While they were out. So they passed the course. And then once they passed like the boot camp course, then they had to go to what we call in the Army, again, I'm sorry, I don't know what it's called for the Marines, their AIT, their additional training. So their additional training put them on another camp. And again, top secret mission. So they couldn't tell their families or anybody what they were doing. But this is when they created the code, and they were given some of the coding experts to work with. So they paired their language, and for their language, this particular time, I'm talking about Navajo. Okay, so they took their language and took the alphabet, and for each letter, they used something from a word within their language to equate to that letter in the alphabet. So then once they put it together, then they had to learn it and they had to memorize it, because from what I understand, all of their language did not have a word for, and I think one example he used was for submarine, right? So we could have gotten to an S, and their word would have been one thing for the Navajo language, but in order to translate it so that it would have a meaning, because remember, you have the Navajo word match with the alphabet, but still, what does it mean when you translate it? So they said they had to make up a word. So I understand. So that S may have been some, in Navajo may have been, I don't know, whatever. But to translate it, it was submarine. But because they didn't have a word in their language, I think he said they named it like iron ship. Okay. So that's how so you have the alphabet, you have the Navajo iron ship, and then you have the English translation submarine. So as they formed this, and it took them quite some time to develop this, then it had to be tested. So the first couple of times it was shot back. So they had to, get it together. Remember, they're creating a new language, right? But a language that we know that our enemy, once we use it once or twice, now let me shift you to football, right? So we run a play, right? Once you run that play 2 or 3 times, your opponent has watched you, right? So when they hear me say, if I say iron ship, if you hear me say iron ship too many times, eventually you're going to equate it with, oh, so now we see what's coming or what happens when they say iron ship, just like a play. If I tell you a down and out, right? Look, I'm trying, not no big football. If I tell you down and out, and for the first time I hear it, I may not know what that means. And then the second time I hear it, I was like, oh, okay, that's what a down and out is. But the third time I hear it, I know that pattern, and what can I do? Meet you there and block, right? So I know I went a long way to talk about language, right? But the same thing is happening here. So they had to be creative so that when the enemy was eavesdropping on their phone lines, they were not able to guess that every time I said iron ship, and again, in their Navajo tongue, so somebody don't understand English and they hear me say iron ship, they did not know what it equates to. A submarine. So let me get back to reading, okay? Let me try to read this and make sure I'm not missing a beat. All right, so the United States Marine Corps, their primary job was to transmit secret tactical messages. So the code talkers transmitted messages over military telephones and radio communications. So while they were in boot camp, their AIT, similar additional training, all right, they learned how to run wire, run cable, how to set up for their communications. And they still didn't know where they were going, but they had to learn how to do this regardless of the austere environment. They had to learn how to do it. All right. So the communication nets, using formally or informally developed codes built upon their native language, the code talkers improved the speed. So that way it was, and it couldn't be intercepted so easily, but they also increased or improved on the decryption. So as they learned it, say if I'm learning a new language, and it may take me a while, like I said, to understand, okay, that means, or this play is, then, but after a while, all of them, 400 to 500, nobody else, because it's a top secret mission. They took 29, so I understand, for the first class. All of them had to become fluent in this. So this is just like I'm learning Spanish, right? Or somebody that speaks Spanish learning English. So the first time I hear it, I may not pass the first test, but the second time I hear it, I'm going to get better and more fluent and more fluent. So now I can not only understand it, but now I know what it means, and that decryption starts coming faster and better. So the communications on the front line operations were increasing, and they were able to get our communication through without it being decrypted by the enemy. Okay. And this was during World War II. So let me move on here a little bit, because so I understand that there were 2 code types during World War II. Code 1, the type of code for type 1 codes were formally developed based on languages, get this, from the Comanche. And I hope I'm saying this right? And if this is from your tribe, please do not help me out. Okay, help me out. Don't hold it against me with the pronunciation. So Comanches, Hopi, and Meskwaki. And if you know how to pronounce it the correct way, then help me out there. And the Navajo people, okay? So they use words from their language for each letter, as I just said, of the English alphabet, and messages could be encoded and decoded by using simple substitution ciphering, which is what I just laid out to you, where the cipher text, again, was the native language word. And that's how they were able to translate it. All right. So type 2 code was informal and directly translated from English into the native language. So now they had to do it just the opposite way. So say they're taking a command from someone at their post, and he doesn't know the Navajo or the Comanche or any of the other languages, right? So he's giving it to them in English, and they've got to know throughout those different tribes, go back to their standard list, their standard coder language, and be able to translate it, to relay it to the next to the next coder over the line. And then he's got to be able to decipher, unwrap that, unpack it, right, and give it in English to the person on his end. Okay, so let's see. So if there was no word, as I said earlier, in their native language described, then they would they had to make up something for it. And so I've already used the substitution or told you about the submarine. So the name Code Talkers is strongly associated with bilingual Navajo speakers, specifically recruited during World War II by the U.S. Marine Corps to serve in their standard communication units of the Pacific Theater. However, listen closely. Code talking, so I now understand through further research, was pioneered not by the Navajo, but by the Cherokee and Choctaw people during World War I. I tell you, our military, you talk about something top secret, and they keep it secret, okay? So we all found out about this by World War II, but it had actually started in World War I. Top secret mission. Remember, because loose lips sink ships. And those men, those Native warriors, kept this to themselves, their secret mission, and laid their lives on the line to save the United States, not just in World War II, but all the way back to World War I. Okay, so I want us to take a journey back, and I'm just going to show a brief film here to try to help put it all together, where you can see some of those that are still that have survived and how they actually took a trip back. All of them, some of them were a bit reluctant to go back, but they did so that they could come back and tell their stories. So stay tuned for this brief video on the journey back.
This is a story about a group of Navajo warriors in their twilight years and their confrontation with a past they could no longer ignore.
I'm looking for any common Navajo names here.
Members of America's greatest generation These Marine Corps veterans of World War II have earned their country's highest honors in recent years for their roles in the victory over Japan. Desiring to preserve their legacy, 6 Navajo Code Talkers agreed to return with younger family members to major battlefields in the Pacific. The unfiltered stories of these men's memories of World War II are told on 5 different Pacific islands. The Marine Corps base in California, where they learned the code. And in later conversations, in their homes with family members. Now, in their own words, here are the personal stories of 6 Native American heroes of World War II. These elderly code talkers had serious obstacles to overcome before they agreed to travel to the other side of the world and revisit what had been for them in their youth, places of utter destruction and unspeakable carnage.
Even before we got to the island, being with my father and watching him, large quiet overcame him. And when they announced on the aircraft that we were near Mount Suribachi and you could actually see the island, he didn't want to look. He didn't want to look over there, and I asked him if he wanted to look, and he says, "I've seen it before." And there was a sad look over his face, one of I think he was remembering exactly what it was when he was feeling when he first.
So I will say that that trip back was enlightening. So if you want to follow this anymore, I'll share the documentary, or like I said, I first stumbled across it from the VA newsletter. All right. And the Mr. Peter McDonald Sr. has a video on the VA website and within their, and he just talks about a little known secret, like I said, that a lot of us don't know about. They were actually involved in World War I, which very few talk about, and I'm sure they're no longer with us to tell their story. But he came forward for the Pacific Island where they went for World War II. And I hope I'm getting that right with my history and not getting it all twisted and garbled in my head. But let me just share with you some of the highlights from the YouTube, the documentary that's on the YouTube. So, and ironically, this was at Azusa Pacific University. Yes, I know. Don't get it twisted, right? That my church is Azusa House Fellowship, but still Azusa, and the meaning just behind Azusa. And if you don't know, I would invite you to look that word up also, Azusa, and find out the meaning behind Azusa. But anyway, so Azusa Pacific University, one of their lectures, they invited the code talker, Peter McDonald Sr. in. And this was actually back in 2018. So, excuse me, he was still living. He's not one of the original 29, but he was in one of the initial graduating classes. So his daughter, as he shares a little bit of the history about the Navajo people, he shares and says that his daughter now drives him around because he does have a lot of speaking engagements, because a lot of people want to hear about, again, the United States and some more of our treasures, and we want to be able to appreciate them while they're still here. So actually in 2018? No, during George Bush Jr.'s tenure as the president, those that were still with us, the Code Talkers, were given their gold medal after all those years. I know. And it's the same thing that I'm finding out with the Korean War veterans. And I don't know what else is going to pop up. But I'm so grateful. And I know that their families may feel differently, but I'm so grateful that we, as the United States, has been able to thank them for their service while they're still here. You know how people say, give me my flowers while I'm here. So we're not I can't say the word, but we're not in giving it to their families for the deeds that they have done for our country after their loved one has already transitioned. So it's an honor and a privilege to witness and to be able to see them receive their rewards. And it's no telling how they felt. You know what I mean? It almost reminds me of just like we know with the a lot of the other wars, when the slaves went to fight and then to only be told that they still were not free. The Navajo kind of shared that same story. It's like after they fought and they went home, they still had to go back home to the reservation. Now, I don't know. I have not spoken to Indians one-on-one to know if going back to that reservation was by choice or if it was the way that our laws have established it. I hate to think the second, but let me read on, not digress. So Peter McDonald Sr. speaks about his experience as a Navajo code talker with the United States Marine Corps. And so the first section is a welcome, and then they welcome all the veterans that are present. But the thing I like the most is how Mr. McDonald is able to bring some humor to all of this, because he even talks about Navajo tradition, like it's like so old school, where you hear about how the family chooses your wife for you. Well, he goes on to tell us that some countries, we hear like in Africa and stuff, when the female's family has to put up all this money and stuff for the wife to go marry the king or the prince at that time, right? Well, I think it's a little different the way he explained it for his tribe, at least, because he says the parents pick your wife, so you don't know who you're marrying, but yet once you guys are married, you are given to the bride's family. So instead of the bride's family bringing all the gold or the cattle or whatever it is of value that they have to trade, your family actually gives their proud possession, their son, who has been trained to tend to the land and fend for his family and everything, and now the defender and a young man, a young strapping man, right? And so they earn the son, and the son goes to live with them. And while he's fending for his family, like I said, in the boarding schools, then the recruiters came. So can you imagine, you're about to, you're looking at the prime of your life, and wow, what a whirlwind. You get recruited to go fight for your country, and you're one of the ones that's able to take upon or embark upon this journey of saving the United States. And yet, all while you're doing this, you can't tell anyone. Now I know those that work in the IC community is nothing different, right? It's nothing different. But even when they were released from duty, they couldn't speak about it. And while they were on duty, they had to be assigned almost like a bodyguard, because the last thing the United States wanted would be for one of them to be captured. And if they were tortured and gave away that secret, then that whole thing would have been lost, right? That whole mission would have been debunked or voided. You know what I mean? So it's just amazing to hear that they actually had to be assigned a bodyguard, because that was their number one mission, to get that communication across. So I'm going to let you hear from Mr. McDonald himself so he can share with you what a wonderful job they've done. And I will say, or I will ask, that you take this and you research it, as I always share, to make yourself more knowledgeable, to look into, as I said, just how great America is, okay? Just how great America is, and all the things that we've been through, but yet we stand and we rise. So here's Mr. McDonald with the second video from VA, Veterans.
Over 200 Navajo code talkers participated on the landing of Iwo Jima. 5th Marine Division were on the north side of the island. A company of Marines were pinned down real badly. They were being fired upon from 3 different directions. Mortar shells were being dropped down. They were hunkering desperately in their foxhole. Company commander wrote down a message asking for help, handed to a Navajo code talker. This is what the Navajo code talker said. This is the actual message that was sent on Iwo. Tepe ana achimbi dati tahi de na sonse taji kochin sita sa ta asta na ki shash. What does that mean? This is what he said in Navajo. Sheep, eyes, nose, deer, destroyer, tea, mouse, turkey, onion, sick horse, 3, 6, 2, bear. As each Navajo word came through the air, the code talker down at the beach command post, he writes it down in English. What did he write down? Send demolition team to Hill 362B. There were 3 hills on the north side, 362A, 362B, and 362C. Beneath 362B was the problem. This message took 20 seconds. After 20 seconds, Beach Command Post organized a rescue team to save that company of Marines. If that message was sent in English code, it would have taken 30 minutes. 20 seconds in Navajo, 30 minutes in English code. Those guys pinned down on north side didn't have 30 minutes. Without Navajo, Marines would never have taken the island of Iwo Jima. That's how critical Navajo code was to the war in the Pacific. And we should never forget what war is. War is something that nobody wants. It's bad, it's ugly. But so long as we are together, no matter what nationality you are, if you are American and love this country, we all have to stick together to keep this nation strong. Our freedom and liberty means so much, meant so much for those who never made it home. So it's up to us now to keep this nation strong. And
all right, strong and prosperous keep our nation strong and prosperous. I'll finish it for them. So as I close out, I want us to remember this picture of this statue that they have contributed to our code talkers. And just always remember, when you go to Iwo Jima, to that statue now you know more of the meaning behind it. You go, and just like we go to the wall, and just like we go to the other memorials, pay tribute and thank them for their service. All right, I am about out of time, and I hope that there's something that I shared today that will resonate with you, that will give you food for thought. And remember, as we pass through COVID, don't stop. Keep moving, keep pushing, keep rising. America, you are great, and we are resilient. All right, have a blessed week. Happy Thanksgiving, you guys.